Well, I'm here with Jay Gavin, who's on faculty at Kalamazoo Music School and does a whole host of other things. Jay, thanks for talking to me about our topic this week, which is the basic creative principles.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's great to do this.
Great to be here. So Jay, you are a super creative person and you have been for a very long time. So I'm loving to get your input on all of this stuff. So in the artist way, Julia Cameron talks about there being these basic creative principles, such as there's an indwelling creative force in all of us, or being creative is just a normal part of being a human. My creative dreams are important for my own life and they're a gift to others. So um, just talk to me about those. Like, do any of those resonate with you, or what are your creative principles that you carry with you?
Uh, I really like the one about of the what you just mentioned, the idea that creativity is part of everyday life for anyone. Um, like I was thinking over the last few days, I've been dealing with a plumbing issue at home and how, you know, a plumber, that's an incredibly creative, ability is to look at a problem like that and solve it with, pipes and whatever. I think sometimes we get lost in thinking that the only people who are creative are people who play instruments or who sing or who paint or whatever. And I really think it's more like it's something that we all have and we do all the time. And it's just, when you apply it to something like, making music, for instance, there's just like with plumbing, I'm sorry to use that as a,
I
a metaphor, but
think it's
you
great.
got to have the right tools and the training, and you got to have, you know, you got to be in the right mindset. You don't like at 11 o'clock at night, when you're about to go to bed, you don't like stand up and go, I'm going to go fix a toilet or whatever. And the same thing like with writing music or recording music, I think you have to train yourself to be in that space um, for a while every day, or uh, and that's me. I know like some people talk about like creativity being the lightning bolt, like, oh, I've written a song or I've made this painting or I wrote, this down because it just like came out of nowhere and it wrote itself or whatever. And like that's not my experience at
Mhm.
all. Mine is practicing every day and finding space every day or frequently where I put myself in that mindset to be creative, to like make some music or to maybe write some music or record something or yeah, I don't know. If that makes any sense. I
Yeah.
think that part of it that we all have it. It's just um, it's more to me, I guess it's a little bit of time management, um, in addition to some training and some what do you like? What is it that you like? And do you put yourself in a place where you can practice that
Hmm.
and do it frequently and then good things will follow, I think.
So you've sort of built routine and habit out of as a piece of your life that's your creative space.
I find that if I don't do that, I don't do creative stuff. Like if I don't go to like I've got a place like a studio that I or a place where I can go and I know I'm going to be alone for an hour at night and I kind of like I even right now it's a little bit of a drive for me, but I make myself do that because even the process of driving there, turning on the lights, turning off the alarm system, plugging in my guitar, whatever, all of that, is starting to like, shoot off in my brain as, okay, it's time to do something. And sometimes that might just be, um, it might just be like playing scales and practicing scales, and other times it might be like hey, I was thinking about this thing earlier, listening to Terry Gross on Fresh Air. She's talking, and and I wonder if I can work that into this song idea I had earlier. And that's the place where you know, like again, back to like other things, like you know, if you're a welder, if you have an idea of like, hey, if I weld a rake onto a shovel, right? I can get this thing that looks like something else. But you might be driving when you're doing that and you can't do
Mhm.
it in the moment, but you can then like later you go to your studio and you fire up your torch and you make that happen, and like um I think that happens for me all the time. Like creativity comes when I just think of like little things here and there, and then but I have to go and put myself into the room for that hour to be able to turn it into something that exists um,
Mhm.
as a formulated idea.
Well,
Does that make
that's cool. I love the discipline of that kind of combined with the inspiration that may find you.
sense?
Um,
Yeah.
so if I were someone, which I am, who has not developed that routine and that discipline to get into that mindset, like what are the I'm sure I don't even know if you're aware of it because it's probably so normal to you now, but can you talk about how do you make that shift? Is it like, I gotta go to the gym? Is it like that type of shift? Or is it
It
something?
is. For me, it very much is. Like I'm not the kind of person, just my personality wise, who, like I think Neil Young, I've heard an anecdote about him, how like a song comes to him and beware if you're around him, like he just like drops everything he's doing and he's focused on writing this song. And if you happen to be like having dinner with him at the time, like dinner's over, you
Yeah.
know, and that's when he's doing the thing. And
Wow.
maybe it's not Neil Young, but like that's not me at all. I'm very much, pocket it away, try to remember it. Sometimes maybe like say something into my like notes, voice memos on my phone or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
and
yeah.
make a little memo, but then go and yeah, it's got to be like part of a routine, kind of like exercise, and I do that too. Actually, right now I've got a membership at a gym right next to the place where my
Oh, nice.
studio is. So I combine the two, like, well, I'm gonna run and then I'm gonna go and play. And honestly, I don't think I had a as good it ebbs and flows too. Sometimes, you're in a better, you're working out more and you're doing, than other times. And I've had like episodes, like periods where I get into a groove where it's like every night before I go to bed for an hour, I'm working on this thing. And that's like the last record that I did, which I know you've listened to or have
Mhm.
seen. That was a product of almost a year straight of really kind of disciplined 1 hour to 2 hours every night, kind of pushing that, ball up the hill a little bit. And then during the day, it kind of come back and then back there at night and push it back up a little further and eventually get it, uh,
Well, and that's a
to,
substantial work. I mean, not only did you write all the songs, but you recorded all the parts, like vocals included. There's so much detail in that work. It's incredible. So
yeah. Well,
kudos.
thanks. But like when I started it, I don't think I was thinking if I had thought about what the end product was going to be, I probably would have bailed on the project. Like that's too much work. I can't do this
Yeah.
every day for a year. But like 6 months in, I'm like, okay, this is starting to come together as a project, and if I can keep this up, I'm going to finish it. And that it's keeping that going once you. I was thinking about this too, as when I knew I was going to have this chat with you, and like um, I'm going to lose my train of thought now. But one thing about creativity that's really important is knowing when to stop. Does
Mm.
that make sense? I mean, for
Oh,
like
yeah.
a live musician, that's a whole different thing. You practice and you get ready for the performance, and then the performance happens, and then you get ready to perform again, you know. But with like recording or with writing a song,
Mhm.
um, probably just like writing an essay or making a painting, you have to know when it's done and you have to like push it out there into the world. That gives you, you know, with that last record, like I could have kept tinkering with that for probably years, but I needed to move on from it, you know. And so I was like, yeah, this is good, and it's good enough, and I'm pushing it out into the world, and then I can go and focus on the next thing, you know. And lo and behold, here it is, like it's the next year, and this year has been far less productive, you know. But who knows, you know? Like I
Yeah.
don't feel like terrible about that. It's like, um, yeah, it's a weird creativity can be a weird animal, and it's tough to harness. Um, but everybody has it, you know. I think that
Mhm.
it's just how you know, maybe it's like with back to the exercise metaphor, you know, everybody has the ability to go to the gym every day.
Yeah.
Just sometimes it takes some planning and some time management to figure out how to do it, you
Well,
know,
and
how
I
to
think
do it.
what you're not saying is sort of some level of self-mastery, right? Where you're
Yeah,
responsibility for making your decisions and follow through and
yeah, and you also have to not be, I think, to beat yourself up if you
oh
don't
yeah.
make it, you know. And but it's um you know, I find that like creative things are going to happen more frequently for me if I put myself, again, I put myself in that room for that hour or two.
Yeah.
That's my time, you know. That's when that stuff's going to happen. If I don't show up that night, you know, then there's 0% chance of me. um I might do something creative elsewhere, you know. Maybe I go and watch a movie or something instead, you know, and maybe that like sparks another interest that like, you know, manifests down the road. So like, um, but it's just, I know like for me, what I consider as like creating music, um, that's often where that happens, is when I set aside the time. And the
Mhm.
same with like gigs. Gigs are another side of that. Like, you know, often if you don't book yourself a gig, book yourself a performance that's somewhere on the horizon, you don't have that thing, you know,
Mhm.
to aim for. Um, so yeah, I think it's like a combination of time management um and you know, like knowing when something's done, and knowing when it's ready to perform,
Mm.
and putting yourself into that place to perform it.
So how do
On
you know when something's done?
I don't know. It's kind of the cool thing about like, especially with jazz, like you know this, like jazz songs are kind of like, or like the American Songbook or whatever, those
Mhm.
are kind of like boxes. Somebody's created a unique looking shaped box, and every time somebody goes into that box, they paint it differently, you know, and
Yeah.
ornament it with. So like, you know, it depends on how on your approach. If you're thinking of a song as just a recording that's a unique recording, um, you know, that can be a tough thing to say, you know, this is the only way this thing's going to ever exist again. But
Mm.
I think if you're thinking of it as like, well, I've written some lyrics and some chords, and every time I perform this, I'm going to do it a little bit different,
Mhm.
or I'm going to let um, you know, those are both like, I think, really valid um, ways of being creative, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
The you know, here's a specific thing, it's unchanging, and I created it, here it is, versus the, you know, hey, I've set up some parameters within which to
Mhm.
you know, to do something cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I like it when my work is both. Like it
Yeah,
exists in the recording and it also exists live separately.
yeah,
Um, so uh one question I want to ask you is like when you were deciding to be a creative person and have a creative life, like how did you give yourself permission to do that?
Uh, um, I don't know.
Maybe you didn't have
I
to.
well, my knee-jerk reaction was, oh, well, I failed at other stuff. So, and
Very
I ended up,
helpful.
it turned out like, it's kind of true. Like when I was in high school, I was, if anyone would have said, including myself, if I would have said, what's Jay gifted at? I would have said music, and probably a lot of people around me would have said music. But I had this like Protestant work ethic or what, I don't know what it was that like forced me to go to school and study, like you need to get a job and you need to do that. And nobody ever pushed me, and said, no, you need to do music. That's your thing. And it took me like really a lot of, that's why maybe I'm quite a bit older, but I'm still um more focused on music and artistic endeavor than ever, is because I wasted a lot of time in my like 20s and 30s, trying to have a real, what it, quote unquote, real job, and finally realized my, you know, my calling, or the thing I really want to do was right there all along. And it took me a while to like go back and just embrace that. So um I think to answer the question from like uh when I was like 12 or 13, the thing that made me want to be creative was isolation. I grew up in like out in the middle of nowhere in sort of farm country between Hopkins and Allegan, Michigan, like nobody around,
Oh,
nobody my
wow.
age. And but with an older brother who had a guitar, a couple guitars laying around, and there was a piano in the house. And um, I think being creative was a way to not be so bored with myself, like I can, and the more instruments I could play and the more like I understood music, um, the less boring I was to myself in a way. I mean, that sounds kind of silly maybe, but
We're amazing. I mean,
and as I grew older, and I'm still growing older, like that's like sometimes if I'm just by myself and watching TV or driving or whatever, I'm like thinking about music and thinking about chords and songs keeps me from boredom. It makes me feel linked to other people, to other creative, like, I mean, it's a weird thing to sit by yourself. And it's funny, I hear my kid do this at home. I've done this all through my life, is just like put on a record and play along with it, you
mm,
know? And, you know, it's weird, but I feel like I'm, commiserating, even if I'm totally by myself, I'm playing along with, like Zeppelin 4 album, on bass and headphones, and I go into another world, and it's a really interesting place to be.
oh.
More so than than doing dishes or I don't know. Uh,
Well, you've hit on something that has been the main significance of music to me my whole life, which is that I feel less alone when, Joni Mitchell is telling me her story, and it's my story too.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's funny, as like another thing, like another side of music is lyrics. I've really like through much of my life were not that important. I was into like just the like music stuff, but like more recently, like I notice I'm picking up on that too, and like yeah, so it talks to you. It's literally a way not just to communicate through chords and notes, but through words and ideas. And um yeah, and I can't think of a more immediate way too. Music is something you can do in your car, and you can sing along with a song, or you can pick up an instrument, be the one behind you, and like start playing in a matter of seconds. Whereas if you're like a filmmaker, if
Mhm.
that's your chosen art medium, like,
Mhm.
or a welder,
Or a
whatever,
plumber.
or a
Just bring
plumber,
it
it's
full
like
circle.
you really got to be at the place where the thing has to be done. You can't just like do it anywhere. You can think about it, but music is really great for that. So you can be in the middle of nowhere, um, rural Allegan County, and
Yeah.
sort of be linked to, as long as you got some cassette tapes. Or right now, it's like, gosh, I don't know if you're quite a bit younger than me, but like I just had no access to anything when I was a kid. Like had this record at home. I mentioned Zeppelin 4 before. That
Mhm.
record has no markings on it. It just says Led Zeppelin on the actual record.
Mm.
The album sleeve doesn't have anything.
Hmm.
I remember listening to that record and hearing Stairway to Heaven, and going, okay, this is Stairway to Heaven by something called Led Zeppelin. What is that? There wasn't like an internet. I can't just go
Yeah.
and say, what's Led Zeppelin, and see pictures of what I didn't know what they looked like. I didn't know what those sounds were like. Just,
Mhm.
when I was like 12, just clueless. Um, but still, like, maybe that's it. Maybe that's part of, we all have somewhere like a root of how we got interested in music or whatever creative thing we do. And for me, it was a little bit of mystery. And I wish I had found like some mystery, like some mysteriousness in plumbing, because I might have a higher paying career right now than I do. Because yes, folks, plumbers make more than
Yes. Or
musicians.
fixing cars, whatever it is.
Yeah,
It's yeah. Well, that's really cool. And I think you being in the middle of nowhere was awesome. And that's actually one of the things that we're talking about to the younger kids and their parents is giving your kid unstructured time, not on screens, and they just
yeah,
have to be left to their own devices. And that's a really important segue to play, which is in effect creativity. So
yeah, definitely. Um, although not, I don't want to push back on that. I think
push
that's
back. Come
great.
on.
My kid I noticed this like during COVID when he was, at home, and we were pretty lax with the device thing because he had to be on it for school, and then
Yeah.
he would spend a lot of time talking to friends. But also he like in the course of about a year, he absorbed enough information, musical information, and understanding about music that took me years and years and decades to learn. He was able
Wow.
to pick all that up in short time because he was, so if you like, it's good to have that quiet time without devices in a room with just an instrument or just something where you have to be creative on your own. But then also like once you get that spark, maybe it's the mystery, like, well, how did they do that? Or how did,
Mhm.
Van Gogh paint this? Like the being able to look that up and find out and find videos about, you know,
I hear what you're saying.
who he was and what his inspiration was and why he used those colors or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
that's something again that I didn't have and kind of wish I had as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, but also I developed by not having that stuff, that I developed some really deep connections to the stuff that I did have
Mhm.
available to me, um, so yeah, there's always, a balance there, but definitely having, um, whatever is going to spark that interest in the first place, I think is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that point though. And I often think about the compounding nature of human accomplishments and knowledge and how that's almost always a really beautiful thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and kind of massive, and like, you know, it's kind of cool that there's, that the internet exists. I hate being on it most of the time, but every once in a while it's like, you know what? I can find this thing out. in no time, and it's really obscure and really weird, but like there it is.
It'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
Yeah, yeah. Um, It'll be interesting to see what happens when there's an outage. Like, boom, everything goes down for like some extended period of time.
We've
Like, how we
already
survive it.
made shows and movies about that. You probably haven't seen them because you live in the country and you don't have media.
Yeah.
JK.
Well, I don't have that excuse anymore, but I do. I definitely would rather play my guitar than watch or read dystopian stuff. So,
No, fair enough.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate you like sharing your experiences. They're unique and very cool. So
Uh, Thanks, Ashley.